Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman protect us, may he guide us and give us strength and right understanding. May love and harmony be with us all. Om peace, peace, peace. And good evening and a blessed Good Friday to you all. And a happy Easter on Sunday. So we are continuing reading from the complete works of Swami Ramakrishnananda, often called the Apostle to the South, because Swami Vivekananda sent him to start the centers down in the southern part of India. And in fact, he said, I'm sending you someone who is more orthodox than you're most orthodox. So he was a good person to send because the Orthodox Brahmin culture was very strong and still is strong in the South. All right, so we're reading chapter 4 in this collection of works in the on thinkers of education, and this is called Man the Beggar. All right, Alma, do you want to start?
Man is restless. Not only man, but every living being throughout the universe is restless. Why? Because man is hungry and thirsty by nature and must have to earn his living by the sweat of his brow. That is why he's restless. If, however, you examine properly, you will be able to make out that hunger and thirst are not the direct cause of this restlessness. Man thinks that he is a person of innumerable wants. That's only imagination. In reality, he is wantless, infinite. That is his true nature. Yet he imagines that he wants food, that he wants drink, and all the things that make up this universe. Hence, this universe is called Annam. Annam ordinarily means food for the stomach. But this is not the only hunger that a man feels. He wants food for his eyes. He wants food for his tongue, and food for all organs of the body in which he resides.
Yeah, sometimes when you look at our overweight problem in the United States, you think that people are trying to become infinite by eating. So this desire for food is, seems to be expressing itself that way. It's funny, I had never heard the term eye candy until, I don't know, maybe 20 years ago, and an artist friend of mine told me what it meant. I didn't know what eye candy meant, but it means things that are pleasant to the eyes, as candy is to the tongue, things that are pleasing to the eye. So that would be in this category of things that we want for our eyes. We want food for our eyes and food for our tongues and food for all the different organs in the body. So, well, our sense organs, that's our problem. Our sense organs go out into this exterior world, and because we have split ourselves into a subject and object, we think that the objects are things that we either want or don't want. So we kind of split the world into things that we desire and the things that we try to avoid. But the reality is that we are really one. We are one with the infinite, undivided, unchanging reality. But that's our problem. We don't remember that. So let's continue and see what he says.
Hunger, therefore, means want of food, want of anything. It has been calculated that a man has 33 million wants. There are 11 organs, 5 senses, 5 organs of action, and the mind. And these 11 organs each have 3 moods: the happy mood, the restless or unhappy mood, and the sleeping or lazy mood. When you're in a happy mood, whatever you see seems beautiful. But in the unhappy mood, oh, everything seems distasteful. Even your wife, your children, your home. In the lazy mood, you do not want to go anywhere or do anything but sleep. The eye that sees everything as beautiful in the happy mood, the same sees everything as distasteful in the unhappy mood. And in the lazy mood, it does not want to see anything. You are, as it were, 3 different gentlemen. The happy gentleman is not the same as the unhappy gentleman, and the unhappy gentleman is not the same as the sleeping gentleman.
Yeah, I'm sure you've all had that experience where some days when everything goes wrong, you end up laughing and giggling, and everything, it's just like a comedy of errors. And yet, if you're in another mood, it's just like everything's terrible and nothing goes right, and you just can't bear it any longer, and you just feel like life isn't worth living anymore, even just for small things that are going wrong. So he's certainly right about this. We have these different moods, and the way our moods are is the way we read things. Wouldn't it be nice if we could always stay in that happy mood, and no matter whether they're difficulties or triumphs or just run-of-the-mill things, we could always remain happy like that. We had a monk here named Nietzsche who kind of took a vow early on that he was just going to be cheerful, and he remained cheerful in spite of no matter what he was going through. He managed to remain cheerful. So that was a wonderful example to see. All right.
And count your optical desires. Oh, you want to go to the north to see Benares, and to the south to see Rameshwaram. You want to go to an art gallery, see fine pictures, and to a garden to see rare plants. But how many things you want to see, though? You cannot even calculate them. So 11 organs multiplied by 3 moods make 33 millions or innumerable desires. For million here is used in the sense of innumerable. All these desires are so many hungers, and who can satisfy them all? Can any man? Or even if you go to an emperor, can he satisfy them? No. Only God can put before you a dish to satisfy these innumerable hungers, and this dish goes by the name of the universe.
It reminds me of a Christian Science hymn that we used to sing when I was playing organ for the Christian Science Church. And we've done it here a few times too, because I like the lyrics. Only God can give us gladness, only God can give us peace. So that's kind of what he's getting at here. And of course, you see this with rulers that are very wealthy. Some of them are schooled to be very wise and noble rulers, sort of the enlightened ruler, but many of them just fall into the pits of wanting more and more and thinking that everything needs to be theirs, and having more and more palaces with more and more rooms that you couldn't possibly visit even once a year. So it just becomes kind of ridiculous when you think of it. All right, so let's continue.
Now, when God puts this dish before you, there must be servants to serve it. As in our feasts, there's always one man who serves the rice, another who distributes the curry, and another who passes the sweetmeats. So God has many servants to distribute the food at his feast. Those who give us the good things go by the name of gods. Those who give us the bad things go by the name of demons. And as there are 33 million dishes to satisfy our 33 million hungers, so there must be 33 million gods to serve us with all we want. And they are constantly satisfying our desires, all our optical desires, all our auditory desires, all our gustatory desires. In short, all our desires find satisfaction, and there is always a being serving it.
Yes, so Oh, going back to the previous idea, we have the same problem with our own people that take various public offices. Some of them do it as good public servants, but some of them use it as opportunities to enrich themselves. And so you can, again, see those two ideals, not only in kings, queens, and emperors, but you can see it in our own public figures. Are they in it because they enjoy serving people and doing good for people, or do they enjoy being in power and finding opportunities to make more money for themselves? Big difference in the attitude. So you can see that if they were more enlightened with the ideas of karma yoga and Vedanta, and the good qualities in any religion are going to teach you that it's the ideal of service to others that will really make you happy, not trying to just satisfy your various desires. All right, and yeah, this 33 million, yeah, you often hear that term, 33 million gods, so that's just kind of a metaphor for lots, doesn't, not to take it literally. Okay.
This is how we think when we analyze the universe superficially. If we think with the scientific men of the West that we are born with our birth and die with our death, then our analysis is the best. This universe is a great banquet hall where the gods are servants and we are all hungry people. But it may be asked whether we are in this banquet hall of the universe as beggars or his guests. We're not his guests. Why? Because we have egotism in us. If we were his guests, there would be some relationship between us. We only invite those people with whom we are related, either by blood or by friendship. So if you're a guest of God, you must be a son or a brother, or at least a friend. But do you feel yourself to be that? Oh, you may wear a namam on your forehead, but when you put it on, do you feel that you are related to Vishnu? No, you put it on because your father has taught you to do so. It's become a sort of fashion to put on the namam. This does not mean that the man loves God. If he's a true lover of God, he will not show it. Swami Ramakrishnananda used to say that if a man covers himself with all these religious marks, he looks like a signboard telling people that there is so much piety here for sale, just as a shopkeeper puts out a sign in front of his shop. A real devotee, however, will never care to be a shopkeeper. He will wish to stay not in a shop, but in the temple.
You do see that every once in a while, people that tend to go overboard and wear several malas and all sorts of religious symbols on necklaces and earrings and bracelets and rings on the fingers and so forth. That's sort of the modern version of this, of kind of overdoing it, and it becomes sometimes trendy, you know, oh, they see how spiritual and new agey I am. So people tend to like to advertise that kind of thing. And of course, if you're a guest, you are grateful to receive whatever you receive, and you try to be a good guest, and you don't make undue demands on your host. And so that needs to be our attitude. It's not like you come in and you say, well, I didn't want this food. You go cook another meal. You try to be a gracious guest. And so that should be our attitude in this world. Try to always see the best in everything and do the best you can with what you have. And that would be the attitude of the good guest. And because you want to develop that relationship with the divine, you want to feel that the divine is part of your family, that you have that relationship with God. And that's a whole other topic, is developing a relationship with God, feeling He's either your best friend or your father or your mother or your brother or your sibling of any kind. So we won't get into that now. We'll just go ahead and read what he says next here.
And therefore I ask myself whether I am related to God as a son to a father, or as a servant to master, or as a friend to friend. I'm forced to confess that I do not feel that I am so related to him. Many even doubt the existence of God. Now ask yourself, if you believe in the existence of God as you believe in the existence of your wife and children, you'll have to admit that you have no real faith in God. Without faith, how can you establish relationships with him? Until you get that faith, you cannot say, "Thou art my father, thou art my mother, thou art my friend and companion, thou art my learning, thou art my wealth, thou art my all in all, my one Lord." Since therefore you are not related to God, you have not come here as his guest. Oh, you've come as a hungry beggar to satisfy your hunger.
I wonder if he's going to tell the story of the gentleman that goes to the king and discovers the king begging God for various things. And so then the beggar goes away and he says, I'm not going to beg from beggars. So he may tell that story. But yeah, if we simply treat God as some sort of wish-fulfilling tree in the sense of fulfilling desires, then you come as beggars, and you're not a gracious guest. Okay, let's go on.
There are many people who think that God is a useless idea, that without God the universe would go on better. It is religion which has unmanned us, and they say, oh, see how much money is wasted in building temples. When men become so ignorant, so blind as to believe in all these things, then God thinks it's time to teach them a lesson. So he sends famine, or plague, or earthquake. You know the biblical story of the Tower of Babel. That time there was only one language in the world, and people had not to waste their time in learning so many languages in order to make themselves understood. So they could do many other things, and they became very strong. And finally they said, if we combine together, we can do all things very easily. And if by combining together we can do so much, then why need we ask the help of God? So they began to build a gigantic tower from which they could jump into heaven. When their vanity carried them so far, a mysterious power confused their tongues. Then when a man called for mortar, his fellow laborer did not understand him. And when another asked for bricks, no one knew what he said. So the work was brought to an end.
I remember, this is a long time ago. All you youngsters won't even be able to relate to this. But in the old days, before cell phones and voicemail, we had answer machines. And you had a landline and you connected it to your answer machine. And one person said, this is the Babylon answering service. So, Babylon. That was very clever. I've always remembered that. So, of course, there's a positive side to temples as well. He's kind of going into some of the negative things here, but there's a very positive side to temples and cathedrals because they become very uplifting spaces, and the architects know how to design the space so that your mind is elevated to higher thoughts and focused on the central figure of the temple, be it a Christian church or a synagogue or a mosque or a Hindu temple. And so the temple structures themselves invite you into a prayerful space, and they have that advantage. So that's the positive side of temples. But yeah, he's talking about another aspect here. All right, let's go on.
This is what happens when vanity raises its head. Now we think that we can do everything, that we have no need of any help. We think with our own body and our own mind we can accomplish everything. And because of this wretched pride, we forget our God. We do not even remember our fellow men. If anyone tries to rule over me, how quickly I resent it. When I cannot bear that any man should be superior to me, how can I entertain the idea of a God who is over me? So when this vanity comes, that with my books, with my science, with my mind, I can do everything, God says, now's the time for me to make my presence felt. And he sends plague and famine to teach a good lesson to his children. And when plague and famine come, everyone begins to go to holy places and remember God.
Yeah, so let's see. I had a couple ideas, and now I'm
Sounds like a vengeful God.
yes, quickly forgetting them here. One thing I remember was some friends that I met at a conference that had just lost their home in a fire. One of these brush fires that takes out whole neighborhoods. But they had been practicing Buddhism, and so when they lost their home, they were able to take the attitude of, okay, so now we're free of all of these material attachments, and we have a chance to start over and live more simply. So talk about taking things in the best light. I was quite impressed with their ability to do that. Let's see, there was something else I was going to say. Maybe it'll pop back in my head at some point. At the moment, I'm sorry, I'm not thinking of it. So, okay.
To come back to our analysis.
Oh, yeah, sorry. Remember what it was. All right. Regarding the temples and so forth. You know, in the very early days of Bellarmont, when they had just purchased the land, there was a famine and a need for money for relief, and Swami Vivekananda suggested that they sell the land so that they could finance the relief work. And Holy Mother intervened and said, no, the Bellarmont will attract many, many, many people and benefit many, many people and bring about much more ability to do relief work in the future than the small amount you would get by selling it. And so there again, you see that big temples and religious buildings have a very important role to play, and how wise Holy Mother was. Holy Mother was extremely practical. I mean, she was, she was the embodiment of the Divine Mother, so she had that ability to understand how the world worked. So that was the incident I wanted to recall. Okay.
To come back to our analysis, before we accept the conclusion of the world being a banquet hall, and we are so many hungry souls, let us ascertain if we're hungry at all. No one has ever asked this question except a few Indians. Everyone is cocksure that he is hungry. Everyone believes that he is 3.5 cubits in length, that he is born, and that he dies. But we Hindus have found out that although we may be hungry apparently, our real nature is above all those 33 million desires, above body and above mind. Men in the modern West do not admit this. They take their real self to be identical with their body and mind. They think, what can we not do with our own strength? So they, like the people on the Tower of Babel, say, let's all join together and we can do everything. Thus, they've developed great powers of organization and cooperation. They've been able to been able, no doubt, to bring many comforts to their bodies. But they have also multiplied their wants. A man can never be happy whose wants are many. He alone is happy whose wants are few. And he is the happiest who has no wants. As Swami Ramakrishnananda has said, the Hindu has solved the problem how little a man can live on, and the West on how much a man can live. Thus in the West, having so many wants, people are never happy. For these wants bring restlessness, and restlessness kills happiness.
And of course, we mentioned this before. Of course, he seems to be on a roll here. He's talking about these same topics in several of these talks. So, but we talked about how our modern society is geared towards increasing our restlessness and our wants because people want to sell things. And so advertisers have gotten very savvy as to how to entice you into believing you absolutely have to have this. You know, if you look at some of the comedy sketches about commercials and so forth, they will satirize these kinds of things where the be-all and end-all is to get rid of your dandruff or your bad breath or to have the softest toilet tissue or something of extreme importance like that. So we just have to be aware that the advertisers are always trying to convince us that there's something out there that we absolutely have to have. All right, the latest miracle cure or the latest high fashion. You know, there's some people that throw out all their clothes every year and get new clothes simply because they want to have the latest fashion. It's unbelievable. What that does to the landfills is kind of unbelievable. You know, that polyester doesn't deteriorate all that fast. It's not like it's made out of cotton or silk, unless they're into that sort of thing. All right.
When a man mistakes slavery for mastery, he makes the worst sort of blunder. They are making this mistake in the West. They're sincere and they want to know the truth. That sincerity will bring them to the truth. Therefore, many of them are beginning to understand our religion better than we. You do not know your own greatness. Although your fathers have given you the greatest religion, you do not care for it. Try, on the contrary, to imitate the manners and customs of the West. The question is, am I really hungry? Nowadays, this question is not asked. But in olden days, people asked, is it a fact that I'm hungry? Is it a fact that I'm 3.5 cubits tall? Am I really born and do I die? But if I'm but a mere dweller in the body, by knowing the body, I do not know myself. I'm in the house. I'm not the house. The plaster, the rafters, the bricks, they're not part of me. By knowing the house, I do not know myself. So if only a dweller in the body, what should be my characteristics? Hunger is in the body. Eyes are a part of the body. Ears are a part of the body. All the organs are a part of the body. But if I am not the body, then the eyes, ears, and other sense organs are not in me. Hence, optical desires, auditory desires, and so forth are not in me.
You know, another way to approach this problem and to curb it is to ask yourself, if you suddenly get the desire for something, you can ask yourself, how will will this make a big difference to me when I'm on my deathbed? You know, whether I have this particular thing or that particular thing, or have taken this particular trip to see this particular show or whatever. And it's something you really can't afford. No, it's nothing wrong with doing things that are pleasurable and fun, but if it's something you really can't afford and you keep thinking you really want it, you just ask yourself, well, is it really going to make a difference to me in the long run? And pretty soon you'll realize, I can probably skip this one. Probably won't make a big difference. And just be more satisfied with the things that you can afford. All right, let's go on.
And who am I? I cannot have any desire, and if I have no want, well, I must be the richest and the happiest man in the universe. Then my duty must be to realize this fact, that I am not the body or the mind. As I am not the school hall, although I'm in it, so I'm not the body or the mind. Then, if they do not belong to me, they must belong to someone else, and I should not claim another's property. My primary duty, therefore, must be to realize this, and then I shall be perfectly happy, for I shall have no wants. And if I have no wants, I am perfect. Want always implies imperfection. And if I am without wants, I must be perfect. If I am that, I am Brahman.
It always reminds me of that song, and I can't come up with all the lyrics. Maybe you remember them. I've got plenty of nothing, nothing's plenty for me. I've got something, but I can't remember the rest of it. But anyway, it's a good little jingle to remember. Nothing's plenty for me, because you are that Brahman, and that is everything. So if you've got Brahman, you've got everything. And all these other little things are not necessary. Now, suppose you find yourself in a situation where you're born into wealth or marry into wealth, or your business comes to be very successful and you end up with lots of surplus. What are you to do? Well, first of all, you take the attitude that you're the caretaker for nice things. And number two, what can you do with your wealth that will make other people happy? Can you give more people jobs? Can you create some sort of public space like a museum or gardens or something of that nature where people can come visit? So these are the kinds of things that philanthropists need to do out of the goodness of their heart, and realizing that they are blessed with a surplus and they can do something for others. I think I've told this before about Mrs. Bellingham, whose husband became very wealthy during the Depression when nobody else was making much money. He was in charge of the Coca-Cola bottling company in the South. And that was one of the few pleasures people could afford. And so they were making money hand over fist. And he was exhausted from all his work. And he just wanted to use his money to go out and rest in a fishing estate. So he bought a little place, not very little actually, many acres, that included a little fishing cabin. And his wife said, well, look, dear, we've got all this money and we've got all these poor people that are out of work. Why don't we do something? So she talked him into continue to build various things, various buildings on the property, putting in beautiful gardens, and then they invited the public in to use it, even though they were still living there. And then, of course, it was donated after their death. She even collected all sorts of fine artwork and china and furniture and so forth. She would buy this at inflated prices from people that were desperate for money, and she'd put them in the home, and then now it's this beautiful museum where you can go see all these beautiful things. And so that was just one person's way of using the wealth to do some good for other people. She got people employed, and then she created this lovely spot where people could come visit. All right, let's go on.
But though I may be intellectually convinced that I am Brahman, if I realize this, it's no use saying I'm in Brahmati when I have not power enough to support my wife and children. Then what are we to do? God says there's only one way, The only escape this Maya who take refuge at my feet. This Maya comes to us as wife, family, as name, and fame. Man is tied to this Maya in the shape of wife, of stomach, of money, and it is not possible to untie himself. So God says, man, do not be vain like the builders of the Tower of Babel. Know that you can do nothing without me. I alone can untie that bond which holds you. Come to me, and I can set you free. And when a man hears God's voice, and he realizes that of himself he is powerless, he says, O Lord, thou art infinitely great, and I'm nothing. Save me. Not mine, but thine will be done. Let that be your motto. And if you cannot have faith in God, whom you have not seen, then go to a God whom you can see. And such a one is the Sadguru, the illumined teacher. Go to him. Serve him like a menial servant, and he will illumine you. He will lead you to God, who has declared, none else can save you, for I am the Lord of the whole universe.
All right, so that's the end of that section. I guess we might as well start the next one. We have enough time, so we'll go ahead and start the next section, the finite and infinite in man.
The natural condition of all living beings is the condition of calmness. When anyone loses his natural condition, he at once becomes restless. For restfulness, calmness, and peace, all these are the necessary accompaniments of the natural condition. If then in our natural state calmness must be realized, let us analyze and see what calmness is. Calmness and sameness are synonymous. Calmness means when there is no change. If you change from one condition to another in rapid succession, that is what we know as restlessness. But when you remain in the same condition without any change whatever, that is the state of perfect calmness. Hence, calmness and sameness must be one. Now, this same condition is the monistic condition. If it changes in the smallest degree, then there are two. And again, if the least change comes, there will be 3, 4, 5, and so on. The more changes occur, the more the numerals will come up, and the more restless will man become. If then absolute peace means absolute sameness, that sameness implies unity in our whole nature.
Yeah, of course, that is the secret of meditation and in spiritual realization, realizing your oneness with the whole universe. If you realize your oneness with the whole universe, then you've achieved that oneness. You know, the universe is set up to look like everything is changing, but in actuality, nothing really changes. If you look at the universe as the whole, the angular momentum all goes to zero, and the regular momentum goes to zero, and the charge goes to zero, and all these things go to zero. And it's like the universe is all dressed up and nowhere to go. That's what John Thompson used to say. And so it's a mirage that everything is whirling around and changing, and yet it remains the same, as our chant at the end will say. So this idea of trying to realize that calmness and sameness, of course, is also the idea of meditation, where you calm the mind instead of having many thoughts going through your mind. Concentrate on one thought, concentrate just on your mantra or the image of the chosen ideal, and that calms your mind, and because you've reached a point of sameness of thought. And so when you reach that point of sameness of thought, your mind calms down. So if you find yourself particularly agitated, try repeating your mantra. And sometimes it's difficult. And I'm not talking about a very... sometimes when you're too restless, it becomes impossible to meditate, and the mind is just too restless. But if you even mechanically repeat the mantra, eventually you won't be able to think of other things at the same time. How many things can you think of at the same time? So constantly try to think of that one thing, and that will help to calm your mind. Okay, let's continue.
When one goes away and another comes in, that is what makes change. If we substitute birth and death for the word change, we find the same thing. For all change means the birth of one condition and the death of another. Therefore, where there is change, there must be birth and death. By the absolutely peaceful, calm condition, however, we mean that condition which is unchanging, that is birthless, deathless, eternal. And since calmness is our natural condition, then in the natural condition, we are eternal. And in the unnatural condition, we are non-eternal. The moment we step out of our natural condition, we grow uneasy, restless, and all sorts of false thoughts take possession of our minds. We begin to fear disease, to fear death, to be anxious about our circumstances in life.
It's interesting that the title of the chapter is The Infinite, or the Finite and the Infinite, and yet he's concentrating on calmness and peacefulness. And of course, as we've mentioned before, if you think of Brahman in the terms of being the infinite, the undivided, and the unchanging, you have apparently three things, but it's just three different ways of looking at it. And it's not that you have to go after all three of them, those goals. Going after any one of them gets you to all three. So if you go after being the infinite, then you'll be calm, and you'll be peaceful, and you'll be undivided. And if you go after being all loving and all caring and all inclusive, then you'll become more peaceful and you'll become infinite. And if you go after absolute calmness, then you'll become infinite and you'll become undivided and full of love. So it doesn't matter which one you go after or which one you care to analyze things in terms of, but that no matter which way you go, you will end up with the whole package, because it's really only one thing. And it's just three different ways of us looking at it. Similar with Satchitananda, the existence, consciousness, and bliss. It's not three different goals, it's one goal. And you can focus on any one of those ideas. Just think of yourself as the infinite, ever-existent, unchanging reality. You can think of yourself as all-pervading consciousness. You can think of yourself as eternally blissful. You can meditate on any one of those ideas, and you can realize your true nature, which is the essence of all three of those. But since we see the world in multiplicities, we tend to analyze things in terms of more than one. But in actuality, all of those get you to the same place. All right, well, we can continue with this next week, where we left off. Not sure how long a chapter this is. It goes on for a while, but not too long. All right, so we will continue the infinite and the finite next week, and we'll close with a chant. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Mudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Filled with Brahman are the things we see. Filled with Brahman are the things we see not. From out of Brahman floweth all that is. From Brahman all, yet is it still the same. Om, peace, peace, peace. Nice to see you, Brenda. Doesn't he read well?